My name's Ryan. I'm 24 now, but this happened 2 years ago when I was renting a small guest house behind an older couple's home in San Diego. It was a quiet, residential neighborhood, the kind with hedges trimmed perfectly and old trees lining the sidewalks. The guest house wasn't anything fancy, just a studio with a kitchenette and a bathroom. But the rent was cheap, and the landlords mostly left me alone. I was working the night shift at the time, stocking inventory at a small distribution center. I usually got home around 3:30 a.m., exhausted. I'd microwave something half-frozen, take a quick shower, and crash. Nothing special, just a routine. One thing I liked about the place was how dark it got at night. The backyard had this massive avocado tree that blocked out most of the streetlights, and the guest house only had 2 windows, one in the kitchen facing the back fence, and one directly above the bed facing the side yard. I always kept the blinds closed. Not because I was scared or anything, it was just habit. But one night in late November, something weird happened that made me pay attention to those blinds. It was about 3:45 a.m., and I was brushing my teeth, already half asleep, when I heard a sharp knock on the glass of the window above my bed. Not loud, just enough to make me freeze. I live alone. No one knew my schedule. The backyard was fenced. It wasn't windy. There were no branches near that window. I waited. Nothing else. Just silence. I walked over and pulled the blind up an inch. No one was there. I told myself maybe something fell, or it was an animal. I didn't even check outside. I went back to brushing my teeth and forgot about it. But the next night, it happened again. Same time, same sound. This time I didn't ignore it. I snapped the blind open, quick, like pulling off a bandage, but again, nothing. Just the dark yard and the side of the house. I went outside this time, with a flashlight. Nothing was disturbed. No footprints, no animals, no wind, just stillness. I didn't sleep much that night. The next night I couldn't stop thinking about it. I even stayed up late on purpose, pretending to scroll on my phone, but really just listening. My lamp was off, the blinds were down, and I sat completely still in bed with the covers pulled up to my chest like a kid. 3:27 a.m. I checked my phone. 3:34 a.m. And then, just like before, tap, tap. Not a full knock this time. More like a deliberate, slow tap with a finger. My whole body tensed. My ears rang from how quiet the room got. I didn't move. I waited a few seconds, then inched out of bed and raised the blinds a crack. Slowly, carefully. Nothing. Just the shadows of the yard. But this time, I didn't stop there. I slipped on a hoodie and quietly opened the door, stepping out into the cold backyard. My flashlight beam shook as I scanned the side of the guest house, the tree line, the back fence. Nothing. I walked over to the window and examined the glass. No fingerprints, no smudges, no cracks. I even crouched and checked the ground beneath it. Dry dirt. A few leaves, but no footprints. No flattened grass. No sign anyone had stood there. The only thing I noticed was that the air smelled different. Not bad, just off, like wet earth or mildew, and the night was unusually quiet. No crickets, no cars, not even wind. I went back inside, locked everything again, and didn't sleep until the sun came up. At work the next day, I felt like a zombie. I kept zoning out, paranoid that maybe I was imagining the whole thing. Maybe I was just overtired, hallucinating from my messed up sleep schedule. But that didn't explain the sound. I heard it. I wasn't dreaming. The next few nights I tried to convince myself it was over. No tapping, no knocking, just silence. I started to relax again. I got cocky. Big mistake. On the 5th night I came home around 3:30 as usual. Everything felt normal. I kicked off my boots, heated up some leftover pasta, and left the blinds half open without even thinking. I guess I wanted to prove to myself there was nothing out there. 3:42 a.m. Just as I sat down on the edge of the bed with my bowl, the tapping started. Tap, tap, tap. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. It was louder this time. Slower. Like someone wanted to make sure I heard it. I didn't even breathe. I turned my head slowly toward the window, and that's when I saw it. A hand. Just a hand. Pressed flat against the glass, pale, thin, fingers spread wide, no face, no movement. Just the hand. I dropped the bowl. By the time I scrambled up and yanked the blind open, nothing. Gone. I burst through the door barefoot, ran to the window, scanning the yard. I even ran around the main house to the front, thinking maybe someone was playing a prank. But the front gate was still locked. The yard was dead quiet. I called out, "Hello?" No answer. That smell was back. Damp earth, almost like rotting wood. When I finally went back inside, I locked the door, bolted the windows, turned on every light I had. I didn't sleep that night either. The next morning, I told my landlord. I tried to sound casual, like I was just mentioning it in passing. But I could tell by her face that something registered. Her smile faded a little. She looked over at her husband, then back at me. "You sure it wasn't just a raccoon or something?" she asked. I nodded. It was a hand. Human. Right on the glass. They didn't say much after that. Just told me to let them know if anything else happened and to keep the doors locked. That didn't help. That night I didn't even bother pretending to sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with my phone ready, flashlight in hand, blinds cracked open. 3:39 a.m. Nothing. 3:43. Still nothing. 3:46. There it was again. Tap, 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 but not at the bedroom window this time. The kitchen one, the one right in front of me. I looked up and for a split second I swear I saw a face in the dark, pressed up against the glass just inches from mine. Wide eyes, a mouth open too wide like it was smiling. No, grinning. And then it vanished. I ran outside again. I don't even know why anymore. There was no one there. There never was. But that face, that smile, it felt wrong, like it didn't belong to a real person. Not because it was supernatural, but because it felt off. Like whoever it was had spent too long practicing what a human face should look like when smiling. I started sleeping with a knife under my pillow after that. I barely functioned for the next few days. Every sound felt amplified. The creak of the floorboards, the hum of the fridge, the wind brushing the avocado tree. I stopped eating properly. I jumped every time a car passed or a branch snapped outside. But what really got me was that now I didn't feel alone anymore. Even during the day, I kept the blinds down. I kept imagining those eyes just waiting. I started setting traps. I placed an old doormat under the window so I could check for footprints. I leaned a broom against the outside wall, just enough that if someone brushed it, it'd fall over. I even downloaded an old phone security cam app and taped my second phone to the window, facing out. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor with my back to the wall, lights off, screen recording running on the phone. 3:28 a.m. Nothing. 3:33 a.m. Still nothing. Then, just past 3:40, the broom fell. I didn't even hear it fall. I just saw its shadow shift on the curtain. Then, slowly, the tapping began. But not from the window. Not this time. From the door. 3 slow knocks. Calm. Measured. The kind of knock someone gives when they know you're awake. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared at the door like it was about to explode inward. I held the knife tighter under my shirt, silently praying they wouldn't try the handle. They didn't. After about 20 seconds, I heard footsteps on the gravel, very soft, deliberate, and then nothing. No running, no rush, just someone walking away like they had all the time in the world. The next morning, I checked the footage. There was only one frame that caught anything. At 3:43 a.m., the motion sensor activated for 1 second. One blurry shot. A human shape, tall, standing perfectly still at the edge of the frame near the tree, facing the window. I couldn't see a face, just the silhouette of someone standing there. And something about the posture. It was too straight, like they weren't relaxed, like they were holding still on purpose. I called the police. They showed up, took a look around. I showed them the video. They asked if I recognized the person, if I had any enemies. I laughed, half because the idea was ridiculous, and half because I was hanging on by a thread. They said they'd increase patrols in the area, but admitted there wasn't much they could do. No trespassing, no property damage, just someone in a yard. The officers left after 10 minutes. That night I stayed at a friend's place across town. But something weird happened there too. At around 4 a.m., I woke up suddenly. I don't know why. I wasn't dreaming. I just felt like something was wrong. I sat up on the couch and stared at the living room window, which faced the street, and for a split second, I thought I saw a figure standing across the road, just standing there. It could have been anyone. Could have been a jogger or someone walking their dog in the early morning. But it didn't move, and I didn't sleep after that. When I went back to the guest house the next day, I felt sick opening the door. Nothing was disturbed. No signs of a break-in. The broom was still where I had left it. But the smell was back. That damp, rotting wood smell. Only stronger now. Like it had soaked into the walls. I threw open all the windows and sprayed air freshener, but it didn't help. The landlord came by later that afternoon to check on a plumbing issue. I casually asked if they had ever rented the place to anyone else long-term. The woman hesitated, then said, "No, not really. A couple guests here and there before we found you." "Why?" I told her about the smell, that it reminded me of mold. She nodded like she understood, but there was something in her eyes that didn't match her voice, almost like guilt. That night, the tapping came again, 3:40 a.m. Only this time it wasn't just at the window or the door. It was both, at the same time. 2 sets of tapping, perfectly synchronized. It was so quiet, so calm, it was almost polite. That scared me more than if they'd been banging. I didn't get up. I didn't even move. I just lay in bed under the covers with my phone in my hand, staring at the ceiling, heart racing. The tapping stopped after a minute, but the silence that followed felt intentional, like whoever was out there wanted me to think they were gone, to make me lower my guard. The next morning I decided I was done. I couldn't keep living like that. I called my boss and asked for time off. Told the landlords I was leaving by the end of the week. They didn't seem surprised, almost like they'd heard this before. As I packed, I kept feeling like I was being watched. Every time I turned around, I expected to see that hand on the glass again. The face, the grin, but it never showed up again. Not in those final days. I moved out on a Sunday morning. I left that guest house on a clear, cold Sunday morning just after 8 a.m. The sun was up, and for the first time in a while, the yard didn't feel threatening. The birds were chirping, the air felt clean, and I almost let myself believe it was over. I loaded the last of my boxes into my car. My mattress stayed behind. I wasn't taking anything that had been in that room longer than necessary. It felt contaminated. The landlords came out to say goodbye, smiling like everything had been normal. The woman gave me a loaf of banana bread, like some kind of send-off gesture. Her husband didn't say much, just nodded, hands in his pockets. As I drove off, I checked the rearview mirror. Both of them stood there waving, but as I turned the corner, I saw something that froze my blood. There was someone standing at the side of the guest house, just barely visible between the bushes, still, watching. It wasn't the landlords. I almost slammed on the brakes, but I didn't go back. I didn't want to know. I just kept driving. Over the next few weeks, I stayed with friends, eventually crashing with my sister across town. I didn't explain everything, just said the place felt off. No one pressed me. For a while, things got better. I started sleeping again. I went back to work. I tried not to look at windows too long or check the time every night, but the paranoia lingered. It still does. And then, 3 weeks after I moved out, I got a package in the mail. No return address. No name. Just my name written on a yellowed shipping label. Inside was a small plastic bag and my old security phone, the one I taped to the window. I had left it behind. I didn't even think about it, but someone had it, and someone had gone through it. When I turned it on, there was only one video left in the gallery, one I don't remember recording. It was about 3 minutes long, no audio. It showed the inside of the guest house. The camera was sitting somewhere low, maybe on a counter or the floor, pointed toward the bed, and I was in it, sleeping, alone. But as the video continued, the lighting shifted, and in the far corner of the room something moved. A shape, tall, human, emerged from the shadows and walked slowly, silently, up to the edge of the bed. It just stood there, watching me sleep, not touching anything, not even blinking. After maybe 30 seconds, it turned and walked off screen. The video cut off. No timestamp, no file name, no metadata. Just that. I reported it to the police, but there wasn't much they could do. No fingerprints, no return address, no evidence of a break-in. The case went nowhere. They suggested it might have been a prank, that maybe someone I knew had done it. But I knew that wasn't true, because I've watched that video at least a dozen times since, and there's something about the way that figure moves, too smooth, too calm, that makes me think, whatever it was, it had done this before. And maybe it wasn't done. I changed my number. I deleted social media. I stopped using my real name on rental applications. I even bought blackout curtains for my sister's spare room. But still, every now and then, especially around 3:40 a.m., I'll wake up for no reason. I won't hear anything. No tapping, no movement, just that same awful silence. And I'll find myself staring at the window, holding my breath, heart pounding, waiting, because I can't help but wonder, what if it followed me? My name is Kevin, and I used to drive for Uber full-time in Portland, Oregon. This happened in early 2020, just before everything shut down. I was doing mostly night shifts at the time. Less traffic, better surge pricing, and fewer small-talk conversations. I'm not a people person, so driving around at night, listening to true crime podcasts while picking up half-asleep travelers was perfect for me. I had a pretty strict routine. Every night around 8 p.m., I'd hit the app and drive until around 2 or 3 in the morning. Then I'd grab some fast food, head home, and crash. I always stuck to city areas, airport runs, hotels, bars, and neighborhoods I knew. I avoided rural routes and weird detours. If a ride came in from outside city limits, I usually let it expire. But one Tuesday night in late February, I broke that rule. It was around 1:15 a.m. I was about ready to log off when a ride request popped up, pickup just off Foster Road, not far from Johnson Creek. Kind of an industrial area, some warehouses and a mobile home park nearby. Not totally unfamiliar. The name on the app was Daniel, 4.8 stars. Seemed normal. I accepted it. The pin dropped near the end of a narrow side street, lined with chain-link fences and overgrown blackberry bushes. No streetlights, no other cars. Just a dead end near some old commercial buildings. When I arrived, no one was there. I waited. 1 minute, then 2. I turned on my dome light and tapped the "I've arrived" button. Still nothing. I was about to cancel when I noticed a shape walking toward me from behind one of the buildings. A man, maybe mid-40s, average build, dressed in dark clothes, wearing a hoodie that was pulled low over his face. He didn't wave, didn't run, just walked slowly, directly toward the passenger side door. I unlocked it. He got in without saying a word and just stared ahead. "Daniel?" I asked. He nodded. "Where we headed tonight?" He didn't answer right away. Then softly he said, "Back downtown." His voice was strange. Not slurred or drunk, but flat, like he was reading the words off a page without understanding them. I confirmed the destination in the app. It was a hotel near Pioneer Square, about a 20-minute ride. He didn't speak again. Now I've had quiet passengers before. Some people just don't want to talk, especially late at night. But this guy didn't even glance at his phone or adjust the seat. He just sat there, perfectly upright, hands on his knees, staring at the dashboard. I tried to ignore it. I turned the volume back up on my podcast, some story about a missing hiker, and kept driving. But a few blocks in, something started to feel off. He hadn't moved at all. Not a blink, not a sigh, not a twitch. I started glancing at him in the rearview mirror. And that's when I realized he wasn't blinking. Not once. Just staring dead ahead, eyes wide open. And then I noticed his hands. They weren't resting on his knees anymore. They were in his lap, perfectly folded like he was praying. I turned the podcast off. The silence inside the car was heavy. The only sounds were the tires humming against the road and the faint clicking of the turn signal. I tried to break the tension. "Long night?" I asked. Nothing. He didn't even flinch. I glanced again in the mirror. He was now looking directly at me. Not just my reflection, at me. His eyes were locked onto mine through the mirror, unblinking, unmoving. Like he'd been staring that way for several minutes and I'd only just noticed. I nearly missed a red light because I was so rattled. We sat there in silence for what felt like forever, the light cycling from red to green as I kept driving, the man still staring. Finally, just a few blocks from the hotel, he spoke again. But it wasn't a question or a comment. It was just one word, very quiet. You. I looked straight ahead. Sorry, what was that? He didn't answer. I glanced in the mirror again. His gaze hadn't changed. Same intensity, same lifeless expression. I was officially done with this ride. We pulled up in front of the hotel. I tapped to end the trip, even though the guy hadn't said a word or moved. You're here, I said, voice a little shaky. He didn't open the door, didn't even reach for the handle. He just sat there, still staring. After a few more seconds, I said more firmly, "This is your stop." Nothing. That's when I got angry. I leaned back slightly, not turning all the way around. "Hey man, ride's over. You've got to get out." He smiled, just a little, a twitch at the corner of his mouth, not a happy smile. It was knowing, like he was in on a joke I didn't get. And then he said, "We're not there yet." I froze. I turned fully around in my seat to confront him, but the back seat was empty. No door had opened, no sound, no movement. The seat was cold. I stared for a solid 10 seconds, heart hammering in my chest. Then I got out of the car, opened the back door myself. Nothing, just the seatbelt, coiled loosely like no one had ever touched it. I swear to God, he had been right there. I'd spoken to him. He got in the car. He was there. And now, he wasn't. And that's when I noticed something I hadn't before. The name in the app had disappeared. It no longer said Daniel. The ride history was gone, like the trip never happened. I got back into the car slowly, hands shaking. I checked the Uber app again. No trip history. No earnings from the last ride. Nothing pending. It was like I'd never accepted it. I even reopened Google Maps to check my location history. No route traced from Foster Road to Pioneer Square. Gone. I sat there in the car, parked outside the hotel, engine running, trying to make sense of what had just happened. There was no rational explanation. I had seen him. He spoke to me. I heard his voice. I saw his face in the mirror. I watched him walk up to the car. The dome light had turned on when he opened the door. You can't hallucinate that much detail. Not with the way I'd been grounded the entire time. I wasn't tired. I wasn't high. I wasn't dreaming. But then again, I couldn't prove he was ever there. I finally drove home around 2:30 a.m., my chest still tight. I took the longest shower of my life and didn't sleep a second that night. The next day, I contacted Uber support. I tried to sound calm, professional. I just said a passenger had entered my vehicle but the trip didn't log, and I was wondering if there was a technical issue. I didn't mention the disappearing act or the vanishing ride record. The support agent gave me a generic response about network errors and advised me to reinstall the app. That's all. No confirmation of any trip. No data in their system. Nothing. I thought maybe I could forget it. Move on. Treat it like a one-time glitch in reality. Something I'd laugh about later with friends. But then, it happened again. 2 nights later. Same time, just after 1 a.m. I was parked outside a 24-hour diner in Southeast, sipping gas station coffee and waiting for a new request. One came in. Same setup, 4.8 stars, male passenger, the name now listed as JR, pickup location, just 3 blocks from where I'd picked up Daniel. I hesitated, but the payout was good. Surge pricing. And part of me wanted answers. Maybe I'd just confused things the first time. Maybe this was normal and I was being paranoid. So I accepted it. I drove to the Pin, another dim side street, slightly more residential this time. Quiet, still, cold air fogging the edges of my windshield. No one there. I waited. 1 minute, then 2. And then, sure enough, a man stepped out from between 2 parked cars. Same build, same hoodie, walking slowly. He didn't look up. He didn't wave. He just reached for the back passenger door and got in, closing it softly behind him. I turned around, heart pounding. "JR?" I asked. He didn't answer. He was staring down at his hands, folded neatly in his lap, just like before. I looked back at the app. The destination was a church downtown, a place I actually recognized. It was maybe a 15-minute drive. I hit start trip and began to drive. He didn't say a word, not one. This time I kept checking the mirror. His face was mostly obscured, but I could see his mouth twitching, like he was mouthing something. Silently, I turned off the podcast, turned off the radio, tried to listen, still couldn't hear what he was saying. So I asked, "You all right back there?" Nothing. He stopped moving altogether. Then, and I swear this is exactly how it happened, he began to smile. Not at me, not at anything. Just this slow, stretched smile, as if he were remembering something, or rehearsing. That same awful grin from before. We were still 4 blocks from the destination when he whispered, "You missed it." I looked up in the mirror. His eyes were locked on mine again. Wide. Dead. I pulled over immediately. Right on the side of the road. I turned around, trying to stay calm. What did I miss? He didn't move, didn't speak again. I stared at him for what felt like a full minute. Then I got out of the car, walked around, yanked the back door open, empty. Again, just gone, like a vapor. And this time, the dome light hadn't even turned on when he vanished. The seat wasn't warm, the app had reset. The trip history had been erased. Again. Now I was scared. Not just uneasy, scared. This wasn't a system glitch. This wasn't exhaustion or paranoia. Something was messing with me. And not just me. My reality. I drove to a gas station, parked under bright lights and sat there for half an hour, scrolling through forums. I didn't know what I was even searching for. Uber ghost passenger. Back seat hallucinations. Disappearing rides. I found a few Reddit threads. Nothing that matched exactly. Some were clearly fake. Others were just glitchy apps or vague urban legends. But there was one comment in a thread from 2017 that caught my eye. It was buried under a story about a passenger who vanished mid-trip. The commenter said, "If you ever get a rider who stares too long, doesn't blink, and doesn't get out when the ride ends, don't talk to them, don't acknowledge them, just pull over and open the door. The more you engage, the more real they become." That line stuck with me. The more you engage, the more real they become. I didn't sleep again that night. Didn't drive for 3 days. But bills started piling up, and eventually I had to go back to work. That first night back, I only accepted daytime rides. Airport pickups, grocery runs, no night shifts, no passengers in hoodies, no side streets. But on the 5th ride, around 6:30 p.m., I picked up a woman from a shopping center downtown. She seemed normal, mid-30s, talkative, but at one point, she paused mid-sentence and looked at my rearview mirror, then at the seat behind her, then at me, and she asked casually, "Do you usually let people ride behind you like that without checking in?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" She looked genuinely confused. "That guy behind you." I slammed the brakes and twisted around. No one was there, but she had seen something. I could see it in her face. She apologized immediately and said she must have been mistaken, but she didn't talk for the rest of the ride. Neither did I. I dropped her off and logged out for the night. But when I parked in my garage, engine off, phone in my lap, I heard something shift in the back seat. Just one quiet sound, like fabric brushing against leather, like someone adjusting their posture. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I sat in the driver's seat of my own car, keys in my hand, parked in my garage, and for the first time in my life, I was too afraid to look in the mirror. I stared straight ahead, every hair on my neck standing up, heart punching against my ribs. Another soft sound behind me, a shifting noise, the creak of the seat. I held my breath and slowly leaned forward to check the rearview mirror. Empty, but my eyes immediately dropped to something that hadn't been there earlier. The backseat seatbelt, clipped in. I hadn't done that. I hadn't had a rider all evening. I got out of the car, slammed the door shut, and left it running in the garage while I ran inside the house. I didn't care. Let the battery die. Let the gas run out. I locked the front door, turned on every light in the house, and sat on the couch with a kitchen knife in my hand. I didn't sleep. That entire week I avoided driving. I thought maybe I'd switch platforms. Lyft, Instacart, anything else. But every night at around 1 a.m., I would feel it. This presence. Not always loud, not always clear, but there. Sometimes it was footsteps in the hall. Sometimes it was my car alarm chirping for no reason. Once, it was my dog, a golden retriever I'd had for years, growling at the back door, teeth bared, hackles raised, staring into absolute darkness like something was waiting just beyond it. But most of the time, it was just the feeling of being watched. And it never left. Even during the day, I started catching things in the corner of my eye. Glimpses, shadows moving past reflective surfaces that didn't have anyone attached. A tall figure, always tall. And then the calls started. Blocked number, never a voicemail, always around the same time. 3:43 a.m. I answered once. Just once. There was breathing. And then very softly, a whisper. You shouldn't have looked. Click. That night, I took a sleeping pill just to force myself unconscious. I woke up the next morning in a cold sweat, and when I checked my phone, there were 3 photos in my gallery that I hadn't taken. They were dark, grainy, taken from low angles. The first was of my bedroom door, cracked slightly open. The second was of me asleep half covered in the blanket. And the third, it was the passenger seat of my car, empty, except for one thing, a note, folded and sitting upright. I zoomed in. There were only 3 words written on it, barely legible. You still see. I didn't open the garage for 2 days. When I finally did, the note was gone. But the seatbelt was still buckled, and the smell in the car, not rotten, not decayed, just strange, like a hospital waiting room mixed with old paper. I took the car to a dealership and asked them to clean it professionally. They didn't find anything unusual, said it smelled fine. But I noticed something when I got it back. The seat memory had changed. I always keep my driver's seat pushed back. I'm tall, 6'2". But when I got in, the seat was slid forward, far forward, like someone small had been driving it. I checked the mirrors, tilted completely downward, as if angled toward the back seat. I left the car at the dealership for 3 days and walked home. That night I stayed at a friend's place. I didn't tell him the full story, just said my car had a weird electrical issue and I needed a break from work. We stayed up late watching movies. He crashed on the couch. I took the guest room. Around 2:30 a.m. I got up to use the bathroom. As I passed through the living room, I noticed my friend wasn't snoring anymore. He was sitting upright in the dark, staring at the front window. Just staring. I whispered, "Hey man, you good?" He didn't look at me, didn't blink, just sat there, perfectly still, mouth slightly open. I walked over and gently touched his shoulder. He flinched, violently, and looked at me with wide eyes. "Jesus," he said, voice trembling. "How long have you been standing there?" I told him I'd just come in. He shook his head. "No, not you. Him." He pointed at the window. No one was there. We didn't talk about it again. I left in the morning, grabbed my car from the shop, and tried to go back to normal. But there was no going back. From then on, I started seeing him everywhere. Not always clearly. Sometimes it was a reflection, a figure in the crowd, someone sitting in another car just watching. But it was always him, the passenger. Same hoodie, same face, same dead eyes. He was no longer just a hallucination. He had become part of my life. And the scariest part, I stopped being surprised. Eventually, I just accepted it. Sometimes I'd glance in the rearview mirror and he'd be there, silent, still, seatbelt fastened, no destination, and I wouldn't say anything. I'd just keep driving, because deep down I knew something terrible. He doesn't want to be seen, but once you see him, he never leaves. It's been over a year since the first time he got into my car. I never took another ride request after that winter. I deleted the Uber app, threw away the sticker from my windshield, canceled my account, sold the car. Didn't help, because it was never about the app. It was about me, about what I saw, or maybe what I chose to see. I moved to a different city, Boise, Idaho, smaller place, calmer pace. Figured a clean break might reset things. For a few weeks it worked. I picked up a job working overnights at a distribution warehouse. Manual labor, headphones in, just me and the shelves. But I kept noticing things. Faint reflections in windows that didn't match where I was standing. Subtle shifts in light behind me, like someone walking past a hallway that should have been empty. The night shift break room had a glass vending machine. One night, I looked up and saw a second reflection behind me over my shoulder, even though I was alone. I blinked. Gone. But it kept happening. At first once a week, then every other night, then every night. And then the dreams started. Always the same. I'm driving again. Late at night, the city is quiet. The GPS keeps rerouting. I don't know where I'm going. The back seat is just barely visible in the mirror, and he's there, not moving, not speaking, just watching. I try to pull over, but the brakes don't work. The lights go out, the road never ends. And then I wake up, always around 3:43 a.m. That number became an obsession. I started setting alarms for 3:42 a.m. just so I wouldn't be surprised, as if preparing for it gave me control. It didn't, because every single night, no matter what I did, something would happen at exactly that time. A knock on the wall, a phone buzz with no notification, a faucet dripping that hadn't been dripping before. One night, I was lying on my side, staring at the wall, trying to ride out the moment, and I heard a whisper, so faint I almost missed it. "You still drive." Another night, I came home from work and found an Uber receipt on my kitchen counter. Printed, folded in half, no envelope, no delivery label, just sitting there. It was a ride from Daniel. Pickup Portland. Drop off. My current address in Boise. Time 3:43 a.m. It made me physically sick. I threw it out, burned it in the sink. But it didn't stop. Sometimes I think about what that Reddit comment said. The more you engage, the more real they become. I've tried not to engage. I stopped checking mirrors, covered reflective surfaces in my house. I even sleep with the lights on now, every room glowing like a hospital ward. But it doesn't matter. A few weeks ago I came home and found my bedroom light turned off. Only the bedroom. And on my pillow was a folded note. 3 words. Again, but different this time. You picked me. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. Because deep down, I think I did pick him. That night on Foster Road, I could have canceled the trip. I could have driven away. But I didn't. I let him in. And now I don't know how to make him leave. I haven't told anyone. Not fully. My sister noticed I flinch when someone knocks, or how I won't sit with my back to a room. She thinks I've got PTSD from a bad customer. Maybe she's not wrong. But this isn't trauma. It's presence. Lingering. Watching. Becoming more real with every passing day. A month ago, I tried something desperate. I went out late at night and flagged down a random Uber driver. Told him I needed a ride downtown. Sat in the back seat, waited until we hit a stoplight. And then I leaned forward and asked, "Do you see anyone sitting back here with me?" The driver glanced in the mirror, paused, then very calmly said, "Yes." I asked him what he saw. He didn't answer, just canceled the ride silently and pulled over. "Out," he said, voice flat. "Now." I didn't argue. I got out, stood on the side of the road and watched as he sped away like he was being chased. That was the last time I got into a car that wasn't mine. Now I walk everywhere, but sometimes I still hear footsteps behind me, perfectly in sync, never too fast, never too slow, just steady, like someone who knows I can't outrun him. A few nights ago, I passed by a parked car on the street. Nothing unusual, just an old Camry with tinted windows. But as I walked past, my reflection in the glass wasn't alone. There was a second face in the window right behind mine, eyes wide, mouth smiling. Same face as before. I didn't turn around. I kept walking. And now, every time I pass a car or a window or a store mirror, I brace myself, because I know I'll see him again. And one day, I think he might stop riding in the back seat and move to the front. My name is Claire and I work in publishing. I live in Sacramento, but last summer I took a solo trip to Northern California, a kind of working retreat. I had a deadline to meet and needed to get out of the city to focus. I found this Airbnb about 2 hours north, near a small town called Maxwell. It was a converted shed behind a farmhouse nestled between almond orchards. The listing called it a tiny house retreat for artists. It looked rustic, peaceful, and more importantly, had Wi-Fi. The hosts were a middle-aged couple, Karen and Bill. Their profile was full of 5-star reviews. Guests said they were kind but respectful of privacy, and the place was serene, safe, and secluded. Perfect. I booked it for 5 nights. When I arrived that Monday afternoon in late July, the sun was beating down hard. The dirt road leading to the house kicked up dust behind my car, and the air smelled like dry grass and sun-baked wood. Karen met me outside. She was exactly how I expected. Denim apron, iced tea in hand, big warm smile. Bill waved from the porch, didn't say much. He seemed tired or wary. She walked me out to the tiny house, a one-room cabin with a kitchenette, a desk by the window, and a narrow bed against the far wall. A ceiling fan hummed lazily and the window was propped open with a stick. The orchard began just a few yards from the back deck. Rows and rows of almond trees, perfectly spaced, stretching in every direction. Karen said they'd planted them 30 years ago. The breeze comes through every evening, she told me, handing me a small battery-powered lantern. And the trees sing. I didn't ask what that meant. I figured it was some poetic farm wisdom. I unpacked, brewed some tea, and sat at the desk with my laptop. The Wi-Fi worked, and aside from the occasional cicada buzz, it was totally quiet. The kind of quiet that's so deep, it becomes its own sound. That first night, I stayed up late working. Around 11:30 p.m., I finally closed the laptop and got ready for bed. I left the window open for air. The orchard outside was dark, but I could hear the wind moving through the trees. This soft, rhythmic whooshing, almost like waves. Karen was right. It did sound like they were singing. But then, as I was drifting off, I heard something else. Footsteps, very light, in the dirt, right outside the window. I froze. They weren't hurried, and they didn't sound like boots, more like bare feet. Soft, deliberate. I told myself it was probably Karen or Bill, maybe checking on something, maybe one of them walking their dog, but there hadn't been any mention of a pet. I sat up, peeking through the screen. Nothing, just darkness between the trees. The footsteps stopped. I waited another 10 minutes before finally lying back down. I didn't sleep well. In the morning, I tried to laugh it off. I told myself it was probably an animal or just the wind playing tricks on me. The mind gets weird when you're alone in a new place. I went to the farmhouse for breakfast. Karen had invited me to grab fresh eggs and bread from the kitchen. She was cheerful as ever. Bill wasn't around. I asked her, casually, if they'd been walking around the orchard last night. Her smile faltered, just for a split second. Then she shook her head. Oh no, not at that hour. We're usually in bed by 10, she said. You probably heard the deer. We've got a few that come up real close. I nodded, but something about the way she said it felt off, like she was trying to convince herself. That night, I closed the window. It didn't help, because around the same time, just after midnight, I heard them again. Footsteps. Same slow, soft pace, but this time they circled the cabin. I was sitting at the desk, headphones off, trying to focus. When I heard the crunch of dirt behind the house, I paused and listened. The steps moved from the back wall to the side, then toward the door. They stopped. I held my breath, then a tap. Just one, on the glass pane of the door. I didn't move. I was suddenly aware of how thin the walls were, how flimsy that tiny lock on the knob was, how I didn't have cell service out there. The Wi-Fi worked, but only for my laptop. No bars. I crept over to the window and looked out. Nothing. Pitch black. I turned on the lantern and left it by the bed. I couldn't bring myself to shut off the light that night. At some point, I dozed off. When I woke up at 6:45 a.m., the door was still locked, but there were bare footprints on the deck. Small, narrow, like a child's, but longer than they should have been. They were smudged, like whoever had walked through the dust was dragging their toes. I stood there staring at them for at least 5 minutes, my stomach twisting. Karen came by around 8 to drop off fresh fruit in a basket. I didn't mention the prints. I didn't know how to. But she must have seen something in my face because she said, "The orchard's different at night. It doesn't like to be disturbed." I asked her what she meant. She just smiled. "You'll be all right, long as you stay inside." And then she walked back to the house. After Karen left that morning, I stood on the deck for a long time, staring at the footprints. The sun was already burning the wood hot under my feet, but I didn't move. I counted them. 13 partial prints, bare, thin. They stopped near the window and circled back. No sign of anyone jumping down from the side or climbing up. Just a slow path around the cabin. Who walks barefoot through a dry orchard in the middle of the night? The strangest part was how symmetrical they were. Evenly spaced, like someone walking in perfect rhythm. Not hurried, not clumsy. I took a photo with my phone and sent it to my best friend, Danny, with the caption, "Tell me these are deer." She replied, "Unless deer wear size 9 flip-flops and have toes." No. I didn't respond. I couldn't joke about it anymore. Later that afternoon, I drove into town to buy groceries, mostly just to get out of the cabin for a bit. Maxwell was tiny. One gas station, a diner, and a feed store. I found a small market and picked up some snacks, bottled water, and an extra flashlight. At checkout, the clerk, a gray-haired woman named June, asked where I was staying. I told her and she raised an eyebrow. "The old Gardner orchard?" I nodded. "Yeah. Airbnb behind the house, super quiet." She hesitated, then said, "People don't usually rent that place more than once." I asked why. She shrugged. "Just stories. The trees get weird at night. A lot of people don't sleep well out there." I laughed nervously. "Yeah, I noticed." She bagged my groceries and said more seriously this time, "If you hear anything strange, don't go outside." That stuck with me the whole drive back. That evening I shut every window and locked the door by 7:30. I boiled some pasta, read a little, and tried to convince myself the entire thing was in my head. But by 10 p.m., that feeling returned. The sensation that the air had changed, like pressure dropped slightly, as if the cabin was no longer surrounded by trees, but something else. I turned off the lights and listened. At first all I heard was the creaking of the ceiling fan and the chirp of a cricket. But then, almost exactly midnight, the footsteps returned. This time I didn't panic. I sat at the desk, flashlight in hand, phone recording audio beside me. The steps were softer now, but more erratic, pausing, then moving again, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, like whoever was out there was circling. Then came the tapping, one on the left window. A few seconds later, another, at the back wall. Then again, near the door, not knocking. Just soft, deliberate taps, the kind someone might make with a fingernail. I stood slowly, walked to the center of the room, and turned off the fan. I wanted silence, and that's when I heard it. A voice, not loud, not close, but clear, from somewhere just outside the cabin, low and musical. "Claire." It said my name. My body went cold. I grabbed the flashlight and shone it out the window. Nothing, just the rows of trees, dark and unmoving. Then, another voice. Different this time, still quiet, still distant, but unmistakable. "You're not alone out here." It was said gently, not threatening, not angry, like a child pointing out a simple fact. I couldn't move. I just stood there, heart beating in my ears. Then came laughter, soft, breathy giggling, two different voices alternating, one male, one female. Neither one sounded like Karen or Bill. The flashlight flickered, briefly, just once. I slammed it against my palm. It steadied. The giggling stopped. I locked the bathroom door, even though it had no window, and sat on the floor in the corner, clutching the flashlight like a weapon. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Probably hours. At some point I must have fallen asleep with my back against the sink cabinet. When I woke up, the flashlight was still in my lap. The sun was up. Birds chirping. Breeze moving through the trees like everything was normal. But when I stepped out of the bathroom, I noticed something immediately. The front door was unlocked. Not open, just not latched. I was sure I had turned the deadbolt. I triple-checked it the night before. On the floor just inside the door was a small pile of dirt. Dry, loose soil like someone had tracked it in, and sitting neatly in the center of it was a single almond. Perfectly whole. No bite marks. Clean. Just resting there. I didn't know what it meant. Still don't. I opened the door slowly and stepped outside. The deck was empty, but the footprints had returned. More this time. Not just around the cabin, through the trees winding between trunks, like someone had been watching from multiple angles. There were tiny drag marks too, like knees or knuckles had skimmed the ground in places. I followed them, only for a few steps. They ended near the edge of the orchard, where the shade from the trees was thickest. And just before the prints vanished completely, I saw something carved into the base of one of the trees. 4 letters. Stay. Scratched in with something sharp. Fresh. That's when I realized something else. I'd never told Karen or Bill my name, and my Airbnb profile is under a nickname, CD. No one should have known I was Claire. I backed away from that tree fast, nearly tripping over a root. The word stay carved into the bark was raw and splintered. It hadn't been there the day before. I was sure of it. It looked like it had been scratched in hastily, with something thin and pointed. Not a knife, something less stable. A nail, maybe, or bone. I rushed back to the cabin, slammed the door, and locked it again. I didn't feel safe there anymore. Every corner felt watched. Every window, even with the blinds closed, felt like a one-way mirror. I considered leaving immediately, but my hands were shaking too much to drive. I needed to talk to someone. Not Danny. She'd only make a joke, and I needed something real. So, against my better judgment, I walked up to the farmhouse. The front door was ajar when I got there. Karen wasn't on the porch. Bill wasn't in sight. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, this time a little louder, calling out, "Karen? Bill?" Still nothing. I hesitated, then stepped inside. Hello? The house smelled like apples and old wood. The kitchen table had a teapot still steaming, and 2 cups. A plate of toast, untouched. A hallway to the left led deeper into the house. I didn't want to go any farther, but I noticed something odd on the side table by the entrance, a stack of Polaroids. Dozens of them, all laid out in a grid, some overlapping. I couldn't help it. I leaned closer. Each photo was of the cabin, from different angles, different times of day, different people. Some were grainy and old, faded clothes, hairstyles from decades ago. Others were more recent. But in every single one, the subject stood on the deck, alone, either waving or smiling. Men, women. Some looked younger than me, some older. I counted at least 40 photos, and the strangest part, I recognized one of them. Not personally, but I remembered the face. A woman with a short bob haircut and red glasses, standing stiffly beside the cabin door. I had seen her review on the Airbnb listing when I booked the place. I remember it because she wrote, "Perfect retreat, peaceful, quiet. The trees whisper at night," but the account was under a name, Anna B., and the photo I was looking at had Claire written in pencil underneath. My name. I stepped back, heart racing. That's when I heard something upstairs, a creak, followed by another, slow footsteps, deliberate. I backed out of the house and closed the door quietly behind me. As I turned to head back toward the cabin, I saw Bill. He was standing in the orchard, maybe 30 feet from the house. Still, motionless, just watching me. I waved hesitantly. He didn't wave back. I opened my mouth to call out, but he turned and walked slowly into the trees, without a word. Gone. Swallowed by the orchard. I didn't follow him. I ran back to the cabin and locked the door behind me, hands trembling. I packed my things in under 10 minutes. Laptop, journal, charger, flashlight, keys. I wasn't going to wait another night, but when I opened the door to leave, I stopped cold. There were 5 almonds arranged in a perfect circle on the deck, not scattered. Arranged, deliberate. I kicked them aside and ran to the car. I threw everything in the back seat, started the engine, and peeled out of the orchard driveway, my tires spinning dirt behind me. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I didn't want to see if someone was standing at the edge of the trees watching me leave. I drove straight back to Sacramento, only stopping once for gas. I didn't sleep that night either. I kept expecting to hear those footsteps outside my bedroom window. The next morning, I went to report the Airbnb listing, but it was gone. Not just removed, completely wiped. No trace of the listing, No reviews, not even in my booking history. I checked the emails I'd gotten when I first reserved it. Gone. The confirmation number, the host messages, all gone. It was like the place never existed. Even the photos I'd taken of the cabin and the footprint, the carved tree, were missing from my phone. Every file I thought I had was gone, except for one. Just one. A photo I don't remember taking. It's a Polaroid-style image, tinted slightly yellow. I'm standing on the deck of the cabin, waving, smiling, and written on the bottom border, in faded pencil, is a name, Claire. The worst part? I'm not holding my phone in the photo. I'm not holding anything. Both of my hands are visible, which means someone else took it. Someone standing just a few feet away from me. And I never knew. After I found that photo, the one of me standing on the deck smiling at an unseen photographer, I didn't know what to do. I sat in my apartment in Sacramento, blinds drawn, laptop shut, just staring at the image on my phone. I knew I hadn't taken it, and the timestamp said it was created at 2:12 a.m. the second night I was there. Which meant someone had come inside the cabin, gotten close enough to take a picture of me, and I never woke up. I took the phone to a technician the next day, told him I thought I was hacked. I asked him to check metadata, look for spyware, anything. He ran diagnostics for over an hour and said nothing was out of the ordinary. I don't know how this got here, he admitted. Maybe an airdrop, maybe you downloaded it by accident, but I hadn't. And even if I had, how did someone get a photo of me without my phone in my hand? He couldn't answer that. Over the next few days, I tried to move on, tried to get back to work, back to deadlines, back to city noise and coffee runs and normal life. But it followed me. Not physically, not like in horror movies. Worse than that, in dreams. Every night I dreamed of almond trees, row after row of them stretching to infinity. A wind that never stopped. Whispers just out of range. Sometimes I'm standing in the orchard barefoot. Sometimes I'm inside the cabin, but the windows are gone and there are only trees. Once I dreamed I was standing at the edge of the orchard, looking in, and 100 identical versions of myself were standing between the trees, staring back, smiling, waving. I wake up drenched in sweat. Once I woke up with dirt under my nails. No explanation. I stopped talking about it. Even Danny noticed I was pulling away. I told her I was just stressed. Overworked, not sleeping well. But then, 2 weeks later, I got a call from a blocked number. I never answer those, but I picked up this time. There was a long pause, then the sound of wind, and a woman's voice, soft, far away, almost musical, said, "Claire, you left something behind." Click. I stared at the phone screen until it went dark in my hand. The next morning, I received a package. No return address. Just my name, handwritten on the label in thin, looping script. Inside was a folded piece of burlap fabric and 5 almonds, perfectly clean, arranged in a circle. The same pattern that was on my cabin deck that morning I left. I didn't touch them. I threw the whole thing in the dumpster, double-bagged. But the dreams got worse, more vivid. Now, in them, I can hear my name echoing through the trees, not from one voice, from many, all calling in rhythm like a chant. Claire, Claire, Claire. And sometimes I hear the door creak open in the dream, and I know someone is stepping inside the cabin, barefoot, quiet. Sometimes I can't move, sometimes I do. But no matter what I do in the dream, the door always closes behind them, and I never get to see their face. But I always feel the smile, wide, thin, patient, waiting. Last week I tried to find the orchard again. I drove north, retracing the route I took last July. I searched for the property on Google Maps, for the listing, for Maxwell itself. I found the town, barely, just a name on a highway sign. But when I asked around, no one remembered the Airbnb. No one had heard of Karen or Bill Gardner. No orchard listed under that name in the county agricultural records. And when I drove up the dirt road, I was sure led to the cabin. It ended at a closed gate, overgrown, locked with rusted chain. Beyond it, the land looked empty. No trees, no cabin, just fields and sky, like it had never been there at all. But as I turned around to leave, I noticed something carved into the gatepost. Deep scratches, faded with age. 4 letters. Stay, same handwriting as before, same intent. That night, I had the worst dream of all. In it, I was back in the cabin, only everything was off. The windows were mirrors, the floor was soft, like dirt, and the trees were right up against the walls, pressing in. I turned to the desk and saw a photo sitting there. Not a Polaroid, a drawing of me. Sitting at that very desk, face half turned toward the window, eyes blank, mouth stitched shut. Behind me in the sketch was a tall, thin figure. No face, no details, just outline, and 100 almond-shaped eyes carved into its chest. I woke up gasping. My phone was buzzing. An email notification. No sender, no subject. Just one attachment. The same image from my dream, drawn in black ink, dated the night before. I don't remember drawing it, but the file was saved in my Notes app, under the name I See You. I haven't opened my blinds in days, and every night at exactly 2:12 a.m., I wake up, without an alarm. Sometimes I hear wind, sometimes I hear footsteps. Last night I heard tapping on the window, not hard, just enough to let me know someone is still outside, still waiting, still whispering, "Stay."